guys!
Hello.
This is Victoria.
And this is Devin Francis, aka Leonard Meltzner.
And today we're reviewing the triangles part 1 and 2. Not the triangle, the triangle.
Yes.
Part 1 and 2.
This is episode 38 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. Review number 17. Yes. It is a little out of form for what we've done so far this year. As you probably noticed, there's no OAC episode in this. That is because we are doing basically a review every 4 weeks on our schedule right now. However, months are not exactly 4 weeks long. There are 52 weeks in a year, which means in a year on the schedule we have exactly one review episode, which doesn't get a new OAC episode. It is a freebie and we can do whatever we want. And so Victoria chose the triangle parts 1 and 2.
I like this two-parter.
Here we are. Shall we begin? Oh wait, no, one piece of news before we begin. Apart from the fact that next week is our first anniversary of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast, July 14th, and we hope to put out the anniversary episode on that very day. It'll be very exciting. Apart from that, the air date, according to AIO Wiki, for album 58, the actual radio air date, has been announced as September 6th. So we finally have something that we can make a quantifiable countdown to now.
Okay.
Anything else to add? Any bubbling excitement for the ties that bind? You seem very enthusiastic tonight, Victoria.
I'm tired and I was just out and it was boiling at the church. And
Well,
we were all dying and it was horrible.
At least when your body's heating up right now, you're not being covered in hives and inflammation like I am. Look at
Anyway.
the positive side. So let us begin. Episode 464, The Triangle, Part 1, written by Nathan Hubler. To start right off the bat, this episode is very special, as Victoria stated to me when she chose these episodes for our review. Not only is it a very important piece of Wit's life history,
This
which
is
is
one of the
super
reasons
cool,
I chose this episode.
but it's also cool because it's built on the continuity of two different but small.
Not
different.
small. There were multi-part episodes.
No, two different small but important lines from long ago. They were very short little bits, but very important, and they happened a long time ago. The first is from The Mortal Coil, 18 albums ago.
Part 1.
Yes. In Wit's life flashback, there was a male adult voice that said, "This is Jenny. I believe you met her at the Pasadena Public Library." The other line is from For Whom the Wedding Bells Toll.
Part 1 or 2?
Part
2?
1, probably.
1,
Yeah,
2,
because that's the one about Wit and Margaret.
Yeah.
7 albums ago, when Jack said that he always had his girlfriend stolen away from him, and when questioned about it, he said, "How do you think Wit met Jenny?" Now, this is...
I don't know what you just did, but it scared me.
It's mystery. Now, this is interesting because it's not actually fitting a backstory to match the pieces mentioned about it in the past, but rather it shows that what was said long ago about how before AIO even began was true, which is that the day that Wit's name was invented, I believe was the day someone, I think it was Paul McCusker, but it might be Steve Harris or Phil Lawler, went into their office and wrote down Wit's entire life history explicitly, back before Wit's Flop even aired. This episode proves that this story is true to me, because this story about how Wit met Jenny was in place from the very beginning of the show, and that's why they could drop little hints about it for years.
Actually, in the official podcast, they said they made that line as a joke with Jack, and then later on they're like, hey, it'd be funny if we made that into an episode. So
I was going to say it's not actually retroactive continuity like Hussey does, but thank you for disproving me on at least half
You're
of that,
welcome.
Victoria. That's why they could drop little hints about it for years
Even though they
before
weren't.
finally telling the whole thing. It wasn't that they wrote a story to match what they wrote before,
Yes,
but
they
that they
did.
had the story planned out from the beginning,
Sure, let's go with that.
and that they did that. So the thing that excites me about this is not only the fact that they did that, but what it means for stories in the future, which is that there could be very exciting backstories about Wit's life where we have already heard little snippets and foreshadowing bits that have been dropped in already, and we have no idea where they are laying as sleeper agents until they activate and make us excited about all the things we can learn about Wit's juicy life details.
Your metaphors are weird.
That wasn't a metaphor. My only guess as to why Wit would be picking up pictures for the treasure room from Jack Allen would be that Jack has framed pictures that the kids have made for Wit.
Well, he probably picked out frames.
Yeah, because there wouldn't be any reason for him to pick up like famous paintings or anything. So these must be Jack. This must be Jack framing pictures that kids have made that he wants to hang in the treasure room, which is really cute.
The painting for Mandy.
And other ones. He said pictures plural, so there's more than one. So yeah, that's cute. Nice reference to the treasure room. We don't hear about it very often. Anything to add thus far?
I relate to Connie's not knowing anything because I usually don't. Either. Her reactions to not knowing things are usually my reactions too. So.
Excuse me. What a friend we have in Jack Allen. As we talked about 2 reviews ago, Jack Allen is the absolute best.
Jack is probably one of the best characters in the whole show. If not the best.
Getting Wit an original copy of the Allegories of Love for his anniversary is such a powerful gift. And imagine what it must have cost and the emotions behind it. I think we all need a Jack to go with the Rorys that we all need in life.
I don't know which one I need more.
I still can't.
We also need a Wooten.
Yeah, I still can't believe, nor shall I ever believe, Wit's foot in his mouth scene about mocking Jenny's writing in the elevator. I mean, I can see going to the lecture to hear it because the writing's bad and you think it's kind of humorous, even though that in and of itself is still pretty mean. But you should never talk about that to someone that you don't know. Even if he hadn't been talking to Jenny or even someone who knew Jenny, the fact that Wit is a university student means that he should know you should never want to present a negative image of yourself to someone, because you never know who could be a potential employer or someone that you may need to make a good impression on someday.
Or your future wife.
Yeah, and what Wit presented in the way he spoke about what he was doing was not a positive image of himself. I'm still surprised by the fact that he actually did this. Hooray, of course, for Nathan Hoobler's only speaking role, I believe, in the show here. Also to the fact that he named his own character and Wit's other friend after his own brothers. I've always thought that that was sweet. Wit's friends are Landon and Arnold, and he plays Landon. And Landon and Arnold are Nathan Hoobler's brothers, so that's cute. And wow, Wit was incredibly thick in this scene. I mean, I could see him not figuring out it was Jenny for a while, but you'd think someone as sharp as he was would have figured it out, that Jenny was Jenny before she actually got up onto the stage.
I'm just surprised that Jenny didn't punch Wit in the face while they were in the elevator.
Yeah. More continuity nods, of course. There's a shout out to Of Men and of Angels, mentioned in Malachi's message
There's so
4
many
albums
references
ago.
in this episode.
Which is, yeah, you know, it makes sense for the type of episode it is.
My favorite reference is in part 2, and I won't get into it. Well, it's also kind of in part 1. I'll get to it when it comes up.
The line, "I'm Guinevere Morrow. My friends call me Jenny. You can call me Guinevere."
I've quoted that line to so many people.
Oh, this line.
That is one of my favorite lines.
It never fails to crack me up. That is an ice-cold shoulder, and it is for good reason.
Yeah.
Because Wit was a jerk. A very, very big jerk.
Yeah.
It's interesting that Wit was still majoring in philosophy and literature at USC, I think, because that's the exact same focus he had at Duke University before he was in World War II. So it makes me curious why he changed universities if he wasn't changing focuses. Maybe after the war he felt the need for a change of scenery, wipe away old memories. And I guess that the fact that he said he was studying philosophy and literature is in and of itself a continuity nod to album 6, to Rescue from... Oh, no, Operation Digout, actually. Which is, 30 albums ago.
Is
Goodness. Jenny
Whittaker Dowd's, real name Jennifer?
It would be, yes.
So if you think about
yes, it is. They mention it.
She's not actually named after Jenny. I just realized that now.
That is true, yeah. I think I did think of that sometime before, but I forgot about that.
Which is interesting.
It is interesting.
I always thought she was until just this moment.
Yeah. I think I might have noticed that once, but obviously didn't stick very prominently in my mind. It's funny, of course, that we have Whit's line about how he could never imagine being a teacher, because that's, of course, what he ended up becoming, along with
Irony.
everything else in the world. And granted, he did also become a writer, which is what he originally wanted to do. And is there anything that he hasn't done in his long and illustrious, prolific career?
He hasn't got remarried.
Drew. Margaret.
Margaret.
However, this has made me realize, thinking about this, that we have no idea about what Jenny did for a living, to my recollection. We even know what Jana did. She was a banker, but...
Didn't she... No, she... I'm trying to think, like, in the... What's it called? The one with Emily?
Great Expectations?
Yeah, Great Expectations. Didn't she say she was somewhere before coming to the hospital?
She was at work, I think she said.
So she does work. We know that.
Well, yeah, but we don't know where. We know she wanted to be a teacher. So she was already retired by the time the Fillmore rolled around, and it wasn't an incredibly lucrative job she was working at. Otherwise, Whit's family would have been richer when the kids were younger.
Is it possible?
And we know that they weren't.
Oh wait, richer when they were younger. Okay.
Yeah. Based on what she was studying, I'd guess that she was also a teacher, but we really have surprisingly little to go on considering how much we know about other things. I'm really surprised that Jenny spent 2 hours talking with Whit in mildly flirtatious manner without mentioning the fact that she was going out with someone else already. Everyone is terrible relationships.
Yeah. But she was just like, let's be friends.
Well, no, but she cannot pretend that there was no flirtatious subtext to what they were doing.
Maybe she's super oblivious.
I don't think so. Based on the rest of the episodes, I don't think so.
I'm just surprised that she actually agreed to go to the cafe with Whit. I mean, like, he probably wouldn't have said no, but if... I'm going to say this a lot in this review. If it was me, I would have been like, oh, you're the guy who wrote that? Well, I didn't imagine he'd be a jerk, and then I'd, like, stomp on his foot and walk off.
It's funny because 2 nights ago at Victoria's birthday party, we watched an action-adventure rom-com about 2 best friends dating the same woman, and so I obviously could not think of anything else while I was listening to these episodes. More continuity hits us, of course, because it's never going to stop. Jack talks about how he used to work at a little auction house in Pasadena, which he also mentioned in For Whom the Wedding Bells Toll 7 albums ago once again. For an episode like this, it's expected there should be a whole lot of continuity and references, but this episode does it exceptionally well.
I want to talk about your next point.
Okay.
I call dibs. So my favorite reference in this 2-parter is Emily, because she never appears in any other episodes. You actually, fortunately, get to hear her in part 2, which we'll get into later. And I think it's interesting to actually get to hear what she was kind of like in Jack's relationship with her before they were romantically involved and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I also find it interesting that, because since they were pen pals, like, Jack would have talked about everything, so he would have talked about, like, God all the time and stuff like that to her, so I guess she would have been...
But he did say in a question about Tasha that he wasn't really like a really believing Christian until after he and Emily were married.
Oh, never mind. Wow, Devin, now I know how you feel.
Yes, you do. Anything else to say?
I'll talk about it more later.
All right. I imagine that hearing about Emily here must have been somewhat emotional for Connie, listening to Jack and Whit tell this story, because after all...
I think it would have been probably more emotional for Jack.
Well, yeah, but...
If I was Jack, I would not be able to tell this whole story.
I know.
Like, I probably wouldn't be friends with Wood anymore.
Well, fortunately, Jack is a better person than you are.
Ouch. That hurts, but it's true.
After all, it was Connie who Jack spilled his heart out to 9 albums ago in a question about Tasha, when he was talking about his concern about Jason and Tasha being engaged.
And spilling.
And the question of his marriage to Emily and her faith or lack thereof. So Connie would, of course, remember all of this and would be thinking about that while hearing this story. I wonder if that's why Jack never mentions in this episode that he went on to marry Emily, because he was talking to Whit and Connie and they both already knew about it.
I always wonder, like, people who were married twice And then, so, like, it's, like, a guy goes to heaven. He has, like, 2 wives, both in heaven. Wouldn't that get a little awkward? I've always wondered about that.
It says explicitly in the Bible that there aren't any marriages in heaven for that exact reason.
Oh. Okay.
Because it's like, what happens if a man has, like, 7 wives because they all keep dying and he goes to heaven? Who will he be married to? And Jesus is like, there are no marriages in heaven, only the bridegroom and Christ.
Okay.
Yes. Good question. I feel so bad for Jack in this episode. He's like Abigail in Once Upon a Time.
Well, I don't feel that bad for Abigail, honestly.
Especially when he tries to divert the conversation, when they're all 3 on the date together, and he tries to divert the conversation away from potential flirt zone by congratulating Jenny on her article, and she just
it's just so
steers
awkward.
She steers it around to talking with wit about them. Like, they were so smitten.
How long were they dating?
They were smitten as all get out from the get-go.
Like a couple weeks
not
or
very
something
long,
like that?
I think, yeah. Because wit hadn't met her yet, so not very long. I find it really hard to believe that the situation continued on the way it did for the rest of the fall. That's a long time, potentially.
Do you think Jack ever picked up on any hints, or was he just too ahead
Apparently
of her
not.
heels? And he's just like, oh, Jenny loves me so much. He says, well, Jenny has her arm around Whit, and they're reading a book together and giggling and pointing at C.S. Lewis quotes or something like that.
Yeah, and G.K. Chesterton.
Yeah.
That's a long time, and even though I know that Whit and Jenny weren't trying to hurt Jack, and they weren't even entirely aware of it themselves, that Jenny did care for him platonically, their relationship was still pretty disingenuous, and it should not have gone on as long as it did, the way that it did.
I never thought about it until this morning when Devin and I were briefly talking, because we try not to talk about the reviews
outside
that much.
So that we get all of our dialogue on camera.
Yeah.
Especially with new episodes, so that we get all our first reactions together on
I made
camera.
a comment that Jenny, I didn't think about it till last night when I was listening to this, Jenny is kind of a horrible person.
It's interesting because this is a great guide for relationships, I think, these 2 episodes, in learning from it, because all 3 of them do awful things with the relationships in this episode, and all 3 of them
don't do what they do.
And all 3 of them also do fantastic things with the way they handle them, both.
Yeah.
And not just all 3 of them,
do
Emily
what
too.
they do.
Emily is included in that mix. Emily didn't really make any mistakes with what she did.
Emily is perfect.
Yes.
Ish.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Uh-huh.
The sad thing about being a viewer is you never know either. Have you ever thought about that?
I know.
I just realized that.
We never will.
Never will.
I wonder if Whit's success in his debate on the nature of man had anything to do with his being asked to speak on the same topic at Campbell County Community College in Hold Up.
Oh, do you think he thought of Jenny sitting in the audience when he did that? And then after it was done and everyone's like walking up to him and stuff, he like smiled and then he expected Jenny to run up and hug him and say like, John, you did a wonderful job. And then he just like looked down and then he's just like, oh, right. Anyway, carry on. I'm just a horrible person today. Like,
did the college ask him in particular because they somehow knew that about that previous debate and that he got a standing ovation for his argument?
Well, didn't he win an award for it or something like that?
No, too? No, he didn't win an award, but he got a standing ovation at the end. Jenny won the award for her thing.
Right.
So maybe that's why the college decided to ask him, a non-professional, to speak on their debate back in album 9?
Hold Up.
Or is
13.
it 11? No, it's not 13.
11.
It's 11, I think.
It's not 13.
It's definitely not 13. No. I think it's good.
Blah, blah, blah.
I think it's good that there's some showing.
What's album 12?
At Home and Abroad.
It's in At Home and Abroad.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it is.
Is it?
Check. I dare you. I'm gonna be right.
Ugh. iTunes album.
It's in At Home and Abroad.
Yes, Victoria is correct.
Oh, 1 point for me.
I think it's good that there's some showing that Jenny's lack of romance towards Jack are independent of her relationship with Whit. It's extremely important to show because it lets us know that Jenny and Jack would not have worked out either way, whether or not Wit got involved with it. It wasn't that they had a good thing going until Wit got in the way and broke up the relationship.
All your fault.
The end of Jack and Jenny's relationship was inevitable regardless of Wit's interference, and that is extremely important here. It means that Wit is not in the wrong for having come between them, because he didn't actually come between them, despite what it appears like, especially for Jack. It also means that Jenny wasn't choosing between two guys and risking choosing based on infatuation.
She was choosing between Jack and nothing. Aww.
No.
Anyone would have chosen Jack. Every single AIO fan would have chosen Jack.
She was not risking choosing based on infatuation or anything fickle, because there was never really a choice involved there. It's truly amazing, considering how strongly Jack felt about Jenny, that the three of them were able to have healthy relationships with each other in the future. Like 99% of the time, Jack would have had to have completely removed himself from the lives of the other two parties, because there would have been so much toxicity in the relationships between all of them. I mean, not between Wit and Jenny, and maybe even between Wit and Jenny, because of what happened there. Even if someone in Jack's situation really wanted to let go of the past and move on, it's still nearly impossible to let go of such strong emotions and build new relationships independent of that, not looking at Wit and Jenny through the eyes of those past desires and struggles. It's the same thing that happened actually to Leonard and Dalton and Thelma. In that case, Jack was in Dalton's position, and he reacted by kidnapping Wit/Leonard for more than 20 years, abusing him in a prison in Africa. Granted, that is a very extreme example, but it just goes to show the contrast of how well Jack handled everything eventually.
I just have to say, Jenny is like, for the billionth time, I have to say, it's a good thing I'm not in this situation, because that scene with Jenny and Jack at the end, when Jack is reading, like, the letter, I would not have lasted long. I would have, like, started crying in the restaurant, and then he would be like, oh, my letter emotionally moved you, I'm so proud. I would have started crying even harder and be like, okay, you can stop. I'm like, no, I can't do this, and I would have, like, run out. It just would have been really bad. And then I probably would have had to, like, I wouldn't have been able to dump him after, like, him saying something like that. So it'd be, like, a really awkward marriage or whatever. I don't know.
You just would have kept going on through marriage and the rest of your life.
I don't know. That's why I can't.
It's hard.
That's why I can't be in a situation like that. It'd just be so horrible.
Dipper nearly got killed by little Gideon because we will have the same problem.
Yeah.
Alright, that is the end of part 1, and so we will slide down and turn you over to part 2. And we're back with part 2, episode 465, The Triangle, part 2, written by Nathan Hubler. So, just jumping right back into things, because, you know, we're just flowing through this very fluidly. Man, the way that Jack handles things, even now at the beginning of the second part, is incredibly great. Even though he saw something so suspicious as what he saw, he does not presume anything about what is going on. He mulls over the possible explanations, jumps to no assumptions, and then goes to ask Wit about what's going on. Not once yet does he accuse anyone of anything. I recognize that in the middle things, Jack behaved poorly, but you still have to admire him in the beginning and after everything was said and done.
Yeah,
wow.
If this was like a TV show or like a rom-com or anything like that, it'd be like, he like knocks on the door and be like, I trusted you, and they like punch him in the face or whatever.
Yeah, and then like the part where he like
great.
leans against the wall and just cries as he sinks to the floor, kneeling down while a Linkin Park song is playing. Okay.
Yes.
I feel obligated to go on a short rant here about the concept of friend zoning.
Brother in Christ zoning.
Yes. I know it's not addressed by name here, probably because the term would not have been invented back then, and it's not even particularly the issue here, although it does seem like it's the issue here from Jack's perspective. Rather, it's Jack thinking that Wit stole Jenny rather than that she had friend-zoned him. However, if there's anything the patrons of this podcast will have noticed by now, it's that I take every opportunity possible to hop onto my soapbox. I'm extremely glad that Jack never makes any comment about Jenny having done anything to him as to the effect of friend zoning. The friend zone does not exist. Being nice to someone and liking someone do not buy you the rights to their bodies or their affection. Life is not like the movies, and liking someone doesn't mean that they have to like you back. Believe it or not, everyone lives their lives with their own emotions which are not determined by your own. Just because Jack was in love with Jenny, she has no obligation to be with him. She is her own person, and she did not love Jack in that way. She never did, and she never would. The important thing is that Jenny didn't fail to see Jack romantically because her ideas of being a friend with him got in the way and, obscured that from him. The fact that she loved him as a friend is completely independent of the fact that she did not see him romantically. That's an immutable fact. Her feelings of friendship were not obfuscating her feelings of romance. I could go on and on about this, but I won't without prompting. Jack has the right to feel hurt, definitely, but he cannot fault Jenny for feeling feelings that she cannot control or not feeling feelings that she doesn't have. That's the end of my rant. Any comments?
I don't know. I've friend-zoned a couple people before.
Well, no, you haven't.
Well, not like dating them, but I was like, hey, do you want to go out? And it was like, no, I think of us as friends.
Well, yeah, you said that, but you weren't actually friend-zoning. It's not like you would have been romantically interested in them, but you weren't because of your friendship.
Yeah.
That's not what happened. It wasn't friend-zoning. It's not actually a real thing. Oh, and I could go on and on at length about that, but I'm not going to here. Back into the episode. Interestingly, this episode isn't really about a love triangle so much as a love quadrangle.
Don't forget about Emily.
That's my point.
Yeah, I know.
Because of Emily. Which is interesting because the triangled web, which of course takes part of its title from the triangle and the other part of its title from the tangled web, is also about a love quadrangle because you have, well, it's not really a quadrangle, but it's not a triangle because you have Lucy and Jack and Kurt and Jimmy.
Jimmy for some reason.
Yeah. Anyways, it's a quadrangle because Emily is in there. Emily loved Jack, who loved Jenny, who loved Whit. If Whit had been in love with Emily, then we would have been stuck with a case of Midsummer Night's Dream.
Midsummer Night Mean.
Blah, I'm as... Pardon me that repeat you could. Pucked. Pardon me that repeat you could.
Pucked. You can't do things properly.
Shakespeare references.
Puck is my favorite Shakespeare character ever of all time.
Oh, we're awesome. I'm honestly glad that Jack didn't end up with Emily immediately after this episode because it would have gone against my point here that I just made about friend-zoning.
I think you said Whit for a second. I'm feeling like, what?
Jack was best friends with Emily along with Whit. If Jack had suddenly realized that he'd been in love with Emily all along, but his friendship had been masking it for him, and he didn't realize until she confessed her love, and all of a sudden he's like, you know what, I suddenly realized I loved you too, but I never realized it until now, because our friendship was blinding us.
I love his reaction when she's like, I love you, he's kind of like,
That, it would have played exactly into the idea that the friend zone is a thing that exists. However, this is not what happens in the episode. In the end, Jack is made aware of Emily's feelings, and he does indeed reciprocate them.
Oh, you're skipping over a lot of stuff.
Not quite.
Oh, okay.
He does indeed reciprocate them eventually, but only after they developed in full form. They weren't there all along, but they were hidden, and suddenly he realizes them. They came to fruition slowly and from scratch as a progression and a process. I really like this episode. You know, it's funny because we go through these episodes and suddenly realize how much more amazing they are than we ever realized before when we listen to them in depth and analyze them more deeply. And this episode, there are a lot of episodes on Adventures in Odyssey that deal with relationships from a Christian perspective and different issues. You know, we have First Love, we have For Whom the Wedding Bells Toll, we have everything with Connie, Mitch, and Eugene and Katrina, and a whole bunch of other things, and the Triangled Web, but none of them deal with so many different relationship scenarios, so many solutions and problems you can have in such a perfectly put way, and none of them do all of that so densely and so many different ones packed into such a small airspace as the Triangle.
You know, Whit and Jack.
With the four that we have so many different types of we have so many different types of relationship problems. They all have different relationships to each other, and there's all these different problems, and we get to address basically all of them in this short two-parter and look at the problems and solutions and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, this is like such a nice little concise guide to a whole bunch of different relationship problems.
Kind of like for whom the wedding bells toll.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, sort of. That's about like.
Well, it's about like.
That's a guide.
marriage.
Yeah, that's a guide to choosing to be in a relationship and how you would choose that. Go.
Oh man, you forgot me.
Sorry, I forgot you. I forget you, Victoria.
For those of you who watch Red versus Blue,
then you're probably crying too.
then you're probably.
Or maybe
crying
not.
too.
I'm not.
That's because you're heartless.
Yes, I am heartless.
I can't remember what I was gonna say, and it makes me sad.
I'm sure it will come back to you.
No, I don't think it was. Oh yeah, I remember. Okay, so Jack and Wit, when they fight, they get into some pretty serious fights. Like if you think about their most serious fights, there's 3 that come to mind. This being the one in the middle of the timeline. So the first one would be when Wit's dad ran over Jack's
Wagon.
red wagon. And if you think about it, it wasn't even Wit's fault, so it's kind of weird that they almost...
You really think that's their biggest fight?
Well, they almost stopped being friends because of it.
The other one, they didn't speak to each other for like 40 years over it.
They stop. They escalate in seriousness.
Oh, this isn't the number 1 serious one. Oh, well, that's why I was confused. Go, please.
So these are probably the 3 pinnacle fights of their life. So they all get more serious as time goes on. So the first one being when Jack tells Erica. Yeah, Erica.
Yes.
Erica about how...
Erica Clark.
What I just said. Anyway, the second one would be this one, which kind of happened in the middle-ish of their lives, around 20-ish or whatever.
I forgot I was wearing it until right now.
So in this one, they didn't talk to each other for...
This one, a couple weeks.
For a couple weeks. They didn't want to be friends anymore, and Jack blew off pretty much all connections to family, friends, work, school, everything. So it was pretty serious. And
Sherman.
Stop it. Stop. Never forget Sherman.
Never forget.
Sherman
2014.
Sherman
Or
is
1991.
officially, and I'm speaking honestly here, my favorite character so far in the movies. Like, all the other characters that are actually in the show are just so non-like themselves, I can't choose any of them.
Whereas Sherman in the movie sticks so perfectly to his canonical audio personality.
Exactly.
Almost as closely as Dylan, but, you know.
Dylan.
Or closer, a little bit closer than Dylan,
just fails at everything, so.
Or Jesse's in the middle.
Yeah, Sherman's my favorite. I love Sherman. And anyway, so the most serious one being their fight over Clara. Stupid Doctor Who. Their fight being over...
I know, I can't say Clara.
Their fight over Clara.
It's like...
You just said it. Their fight over Clara, where they did not speak to each other for years. I don't really understand the outcome of that fight. I don't know if I ever will completely, because... Anyway, so this fight was when they're older. Because, like, Jack said that him and Wit were they were, like, pen pals or whatever, unless he was lying about that, which I don't think he was. And Wit's like, hey, you should come visit, and then Jack visits, and he's
I don't think they were writing extremely regularly to each other.
Yeah, but still, if they were, like, writing to each other, you would think that...
I don't think it was, like, long, amiable, so how are you doing since our last letter kind of writing?
Yeah, I know, but Wit said, like, he should come visit Odyssey.
I know, because he wanted to reconcile with him. He wrote him a letter saying, you should come and visit, we need to make up.
Yeah, so why wouldn't he came and he's just like, I'm a monster, and then he tries to leave.
Well, just because Wit had forgiven him didn't mean that he'd forgiven himself.
So, like, if we look at all those 3 fights, who was at fault in all of them? In the first one, would it be Jack? Because for some reason he blamed Wit, even though it was Wit's dad's fault.
Yeah, Harold. It was Jack's fault.
So, also I'm confused. They grew up in the U.S., but they also were from Scotland.
No, Jack's Jack was born in Scotland, I think, right?
Oh,
And Whit was from Scotland, but they moved to North Carolina when he was like 6.
and Jack lived in North Carolina.
Presumably.
So then
I don't think when they. No, I don't think they knew each other in Scotland, Victoria.
Okay.
They lived together in North Carolina, and they just both happened to have been originally from Scotland.
Oh, what a crazy random happenstance.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, I don't know, maybe Jax was at fault in the first fight for blaming Whit. Second one, would you say their fight in this one is Jack's fault?
Everyone is at fault here.
Yeah, everyone's kind of at fault. The last one, it's kind of everyone at fault.
Yeah.
In each case, which is kind of interesting.
How so?
Well, lots of the times like fights are kind of one-sided. So, but in this one, first one, it's 3 parties' fault. Maybe not really Whit as much, but he must have been in the fight to how to escalate to them almost not being friends. 3 people in the second fight. Actually, like 5 people in the last one. So.
Because you're counting Peter and Peggy Portland?
Yeah, and Clara.
Yeah. Is that the end of your rant?
It wasn't really a rant.
Well, yeah.
Yes. It was a comment. I don't have much to say in this one, because everything I'm about to say, Devin says before I do. Just assume I agree with pretty much everything.
That is why I take notes.
Well, all my notes are the same.
True.
So
all of my rants aside, it makes me happy to hear that the first thing that Jack does when he's upset reflexively is to write a letter to Emily.
Aww.
It's cool that even when everyone was partially at fault here, everyone still did some stuff right, like I said before. Like, this is an incredibly well-written episode. Nathan Hooler is a fantastic writer.
Woo.
I adore the fact that these episodes don't just thoroughly cover the situation that happened, like I said, but they also discuss many other potential relationship scenarios, theoretically. It's great. I can't think of specific examples, but apparently I could when I wrote that note. Emily handled things excellently here. She supported Jack through all of his feelings for Jenny.
Emily's probably the wisest character in this episode.
Yeah. Back when Jack was behaving rationally and moving through the proper progression of his emotions, she supported Jack through everything he was going through, even though they went completely against her own feelings. She was Jane Crockering the situation very well. When she realized that the relationship was becoming toxic to him and that he needed to stop wallowing in it, she stopped feeding into it, and instead she came to address the problem in person because she knew that's how she could get him to listen to it. She also realized that the best thing to do for the relationship was to confess her own feelings, even though obviously she'd been scared to do this in the past, but she realized it was the healthiest thing for everyone to put those cards on the table, and so she did that for Jack's sake.
She also knew that meant Jack might not feel the same thing and just like openly reject her.
Yeah, it was a very brave move on her part.
It was kind of like roofing it.
Emily also has a very perceptive eye, I must say, to what is going on in the situation. I mean, she has a slight...
Well, Jack has been writing for her a lot.
I know, but she has a slight advantage because she wasn't entrenched in all of it and caught up in, like, seeing things from a personal point of view. But she's also at a great disadvantage because even though she knows Jack explicitly well, you know, she knows Whit pretty well, and she'd never even met Jenny before. So to be able to see, you know, they were doing this and they were doing this, and even though you can't see this, Jack, this is what was going on. The fact that she was able to see this with people that she doesn't know in situations where she wasn't present is incredibly perceptive.
She probably figured it out because she was kind of in the same situation with Jack.
Well, it was a different situation.
Well,
I mean, there's similarities,
there's similarities, but it's like Jenny likes him, wants to be with, like, Jenny wants to be with a different guy, and Emily wants to be with Jack. So she must have seen enough similarities to be like, oh, okay, I know what's going on here.
That's a good point. The line where Jack says, "Aren't I entitled to be hurt?" and Emily says, "Of course you are, but not when it cuts you off from everyone." That is an excellent line because there's a distinction that I don't think people really realize enough. There are some people who are like, yes, if you feel like you've been wronged like this, you need to wallow in that self-pity, and you need to go, and then you need to go shoot up a high school and kill a bunch of people. That's the one extreme of it, you know, that has happened recently, the USCB shooting. Even though he never actually interacted with those women directly in that manner, that's the same idea, you know, wallow in those emotions. And there were people on the internet who agreed with him, saying, yeah, he was totally friend-zoned by everyone. He was in the right for going and killing all of those people. I agree with that. That is the one horrifying extreme of that. On the other end, there's the people who say, you know what, even if you feel like you've been friend-zoned, even though you weren't, if you feel like you're in that situation, you know what, you can't feel hurt because it was your own fault, and you're not entitled to have any emotions over that. And neither of those are correct. I think the former is more incorrect, but there is a balance, and Emily hits the nail right on the head. Jack is entitled to be heard about it, but he cannot let those negative emotions take over his life and impact his relationships with other people. I have really underappreciated these episodes in the past. There's super solid relationship advice coming out the wazoo here.
You can see where Jack gained lots of his infinite wisdom.
That's a good point.
Emily.
Good point. Imagine if Emily was still alive and she moved to Odyssey with Jack and helped run Wits End. And she was given advice too. Hearing Jack talk about the incidents with Emily and her father and his bull, it really makes me think of Jack and Emily like they were really just Eugene and Katrina from the past. It sounds exactly like something that would have happened with Eugene and Katrina.
Right choice or something like that.
Or the turning point.
Yeah.
Something with Eugene and Katrina and Armitage and some ridiculous situation Eugene got into because of Armitage's ridiculous
richness. You could totally
richness.
Quote these lines in a situation with Eugene and Katrina, and it'd be completely believable.
Yeah, when he says, it was just like me and your father's bull, I thought that sounds exactly like something Eugene would say about some crazy thing that happened between him and Armitage before he died. Oh, the way that in the end all of them sacrifice for each other and want to give up everything for everyone else is, these three...
Four.
Well, yeah, but I mean the three focused on in the episode. Emily too, but yeah. I mean, because they were these three who were all sacrificing for each other in the end. Jack and Whit and Jenny. Like, the feels. I can't imagine how Whit and Jenny must have handled Jerry tearing up the allegories of love from his fort. Like, seriously,
so
I would freeze.
I just love the part when, like, Jack gives the book to Whit.
I know.
Also, I kind of think that I would have reacted the same way Jack did to Whit following him up on stage and being like, no, you need to go, and then it'd, like, take it the wrong way. The thing is, I would probably do it on purpose just to still mess with the person because I'd be a little bit upset still.
Well, once again, it's a good thing that Jack is the better person.
Yeah. I still would have done the same thing, though. Anyway, I really, really love Emily in this episode. You can actually tell why Jack married her, even though it might sound a bit horrible to say. Probably a little bit, 'cause she wasn't a Christian. Know what I mean, though?
Yeah.
Because
she was a wise woman.
Yeah, I just love Emily so much. Like, she's one of those characters that doesn't have a lot of screen time or audio. I don't know what it's called.
Ear time, I guess.
Time. I don't know. But it leaves a very big impact. I also like how I think Emily is my favorite thing about this two-parter. Whit and Jenny are adorable. I'm just gonna put that out there. They are so cute together. I like how Jack mentions Emily in the first part, so it's not just kind of like out of the blue when he talks to her in the second part. Also, I just love everything about Emily, like how you get to learn more about her and what her relationship was like before her and Jack got married.
Especially retrospectively, since we already know who she would become to Jack from a question about Tasha.
So it's actually really sad to hear everything about it. Everything with her. You could also say that about Jenny, too, but it's a bit sadder with Emily.
Oh, the scene in Recollections when Jenny passes away is definitely, like, one of the very, very top saddest scenes in all of Odyssey.
And So, yeah, I just pretty much love everything with Emily in this episode so much. And then Jack's all like, hey, you guys should come out with Emily and me, because we're all buddies. And then it's like, yay, we meet up.
Anything else to add?
Wasn't there one point when, like, Jack mentioned Emily and Connie's like, Emily? Or
yeah, the first time she says, who is Emily? And it's like, he was a pen. I'm guessing, because she would, when she hears Emily, she probably wouldn't think, oh, this person became your wife. I mean, it's not like she would have thought of that immediately, probably, or even that Jack would have necessarily only known one Emily, so probably once he said that, then she realized who Emily was. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Because she does know who Emily is. Like,
if she forgot, I'm going to be so mad. Because, like, Jack opened
Connie doesn't know a lot of things that are going on, so the things that she does know about, she remembers well.
Yeah.
Headcanon number 6.
I can appreciate that. Anyway.
Should I rate first, or shall you?
You rate first. I already know what my
Alright.
is.
I was thinking, what am I going to give it before I listen to the episodes? I was thinking, it's really good. Like, I could probably give it solid, 4.5 or something. Going through it now, I'm like, I give so many episodes 5s, and I mean, it's kind of justified because we usually pick episodes because we like them and stuff.
I was just thinking that too.
But I feel like we give 5s out to everything so freely. But honestly...
No, don't think about the other reviews.
But no, honestly, I thought, okay, if I give it a 4.5, I was thinking this partway through before I was like, okay, I have to give this a 5. When I was thinking about it, I was like, what could I fault this for to lower its mark to a 4.5? And
nothing.
I don't know what I would. This episode is a perfect, concise little parcel of solid relationship advice showing a whole bunch of different scenarios in a bunch of woven, interconnected relationships, showing both positive things and negative things that you could do in relationships, overall grounded in prayer and God's design for, who He wants us to be with. It is pumped full of continuity, hanging out from every orifice, and it is a very important part of its backstory, which fits into all sorts of other things we've heard about it before, and we get to hear all about that, like I said, in a very important context of lesson, which has a very many multifaceted parts to it in this episode. And, has cool music of the period, too. And Jim Custer as Wit, which is always cool.
I just love...
So 5 out of 5, yeah.
I just love Connie and Jack's, constant... I can't remember how much of it there is in the second part, but in the first part, they're just little stabs at Wit, kind of teasing him for how head over heels he was and stuff like that. Like when they're talking about the basketball game. No, it was a baseball game. And so they're like, oh, he was too distracted, and Connie's just like, ooh, and stuff like that. And I think the one moment, the biggest moment in the whole two-parter, when you're just your heart just completely melts and overflows into the pool of
now who's getting metaphorical?
Thank you. Is just that last little scene when Connie's and then they're explaining the final thing with the book and stuff, and then they say especially today, and then they're like, why? And I always forget about this part in the episode, but it's just the cherry on top, and they're like, today's our wedding day, and that's where you're just oh my god.
I was kind of surprised that Connie didn't realize it was their anniversary, but considering she never knew Jenny and probably wouldn't have celebrated publicly their anniversary or mentioned it, it does make sense that she wouldn't have known or remembered that that's when it was.
What time do you think it was in the day? Afternoon? I'd say afternoon or morning.
Probably, yeah, I don't know. Why?
So, because I'm thinking Whit probably would have gone to the cemetery to wish Jenny a happy anniversary that morning. I'm gonna prepare yourself, Evan. But if he hadn't yet, and he was planning on doing it in the afternoon, he'd go to the antique shop, buy some flowers, then go down. He would have gone down, and then he would have held the book out and you were like, look what Jack gave us and stuff.
I thought you were going to say take Jack with him, too.
No, but he would have been like, Jack gave us a copy of the book and no crayons or ripped pages in this one.
Wipe that smug look off your face.
What? I'm just coming up with all the ways to emotionally damage Devin today.
Yeah.
Like, this is probably about the 7th time.
7th.
Well, there were quite a few times earlier today.
Well, it's the 3rd time. 2 of them were in this episode. And the first one wasn't you. You didn't cause it. Is that everything?
The stuff with Emily in this episode is perfect.
Yes.
She's probably my favorite character also in this episode.
I want to know her maiden name.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. You'd think they would have said it. I love the voices of the younger versions. Every single time they show up, I get super happy because I just love their voices.
I'm
so
super
much.
happy about the fact that they've been able to use Jim Custer consistently as young adult wit across the board. Basically, the entire history of the show, all the way up into album 56, still they're using Jim Custer for young wit. And
that is my favorite.
In album
That's
6, right?
Rescue
from Manitoba Point, Operation
Yeah.
Zygo was probably the first time that they had him play.
That is one of my
That's 50 albums, and
that I love his
he's
voice
been
so much.
playing wit for longer than any of the adult wit actors. He's played wit for longer than Hal Smith did, or Paul Herlinger, or Andre Stoika.
Definitely Andre Stoika.
Yeah.
He's had the
So-
shortest run so far.
Ah, that's super cool. Anything else to add?
Jack doesn't sound like he does in The Mortal Coil, but Jason does neither, so I'll ignore it.
Yeah.
Even though it really bothers me a lot. I didn't even notice the whole Jason thing for a really long time. Like, probably about a couple of years ago, I was listening to it, and I'm like, something sounds wrong. And then I'm like, what's wrong with Jason's voice? I'm like, was he sick or something? Is it because he's younger? And
What,
then
you
I'm
mean,
like,
even though this was a one-off appearance by Jason Whittaker, and they probably figured he would never appear again, and the fact that this episode was 6 albums before he actually became a permanent character, that they wouldn't have the actor who would eventually go on to play him forever?
well, I just never picked up on it until, like, actually it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago when I did. It's weird to think I'm so old. To me, it still feels like I was in grade 7 a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I know.
For me or for you?
Both.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so then I finally realized it. I'm like, huh. Yeah. 5 stars. Love this episode. So wonderful. We have to choose one next time that we don't like so much.
Yeah.
I
You don't
think.
like bloopers?
Shut your mouth. I thought for the 2-parter, because we were planning on doing a 2-parter, because it was a 2-slot review.
Gives us prime
I
opportunity.
wanted us to do our shared least favorite episode. But that would imply us having to listen to it, and I didn't really want to do that so much.
It's stepping stones. Also because it's not actually a canonical episode, technically speaking. It doesn't have a number, so makes it more annoying in the classification.
My next least favorite episode is A Change of Heart.
So, Victoria, what's happening next time?
Why are you touching me?
What's happening next time?
Oh, why?
What's happening next time?
Oh, my hair. It's our anniversary for the Oddcast. Woo! No, my arms. Okay, there they go.
July 14th. July 14th is going to be our anniversary. We're going to a medium-sized celebration. There will be some clips. There's going to be cake. There's going to be
episode predictions.
Yeah, the most important thing is we are going to be doing all of our predictions for album 58, The Ties That Bind, along with other celebration special stuff, because it's our anniversary. Hopefully it's going to come out on the very day at the schedule. It should come out like that, but we'll see how things go down. Oh, so very exciting. Until then, very soon, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis.
And I have been Victoria.
And you have been watching The Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.
Oddcast.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Hey guys, just as a quick addendum, as I was editing this video, I realized that I totally forgot to put in the bonus stuff from the official guide, so I just wanted to add that in right now very quickly at the end. Behind the scenes, the triangle. The flashback scenes of the triangle were recorded in Colorado rather than California. Jim Custer played young Whit, matching the voice he did for the part in Rescue from Manitogo Point, Album 6. During auditions for the part of young Jenny, writer Marshall Younger filled in the lines of young Jack. Paul McCusker noted that Marshall's voice had a vocal quality similar to Alan Young's, and so Marshall was quickly cast as young Jack Allen. Marshall remembers, "The toughest scene for me to do was when young Jack hears the phone ring, and without words, he has to convey the feeling of, 'I will answer that. No, wait. It might be Jenny,' and that would be too difficult to deal with. Of course, I shouldn't be rude to her. No, it's probably not her anyway." We had to do that scene about 10 times. And here's the other bit. Oh, here's a picture of Jim Custer here to portray him being young Whit. My take, Nathan Hubler. During my summer internship of 2000, Paul McCusker suggested that I write an episode explaining the line in For Whom the Wedding Bells Toll, Album 29, and this is what Victoria was talking about, where Jack mentions that Jenny was originally his girlfriend. I love knowing the minutiae and the tiny details of the characters, so I started my writing by rereading many of the stories about Whit's history. By the way, characters Nolan and Landon are named after two of my brothers. My sister's name is Emily, the same as Jack's pen pal and future wife, but this coincidence was not planned because the character of Emily had been named long before I came on the scene. And that is it for the triangle. So that's the end of the video. Goodbye.